He's striving so hard to make it valid every day.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So, by the way, let me answer a couple of questions. Yes, it is the brig.
Thank you.
That's where we'll be taking people. That's the hoosgow or the pokey for naughty sailors or people who do anything around ships. And second, you and I could go solve that bottleneck down at Port of Los Angeles. All we'd have to do is, like you said, go down there, show some, and both of us. I've got my management coffee cup in my hands, and we know how to curse.
By the way, that was one of my favorite porns, was Naughty Sailors. But
oh my God,
what?
No,
you don't watch porn.
I know. I'm just kidding. Hey, Malcolm. I've never been to Fleet Week either.
Okay.
It wasn't the Sarah Palin video.
Hey. How are you feeling after watching January 6th? Because I was saying I was struck by, how clearly they're serious, and clearly the vote is tomorrow, right? It's not, as dragged out as people thought it was going to be. They are moving, I think, with speed. And, I'm feeling more hopeful after yesterday. How about you?
Sure. And it played out precisely as they said it would play out, that it would take to the following Tuesday. He defied them on Friday. Interesting point, and this is where some of the top legal experts on the internet, like Glenn Kirshner and Empty Wheel, have both said he actually had to defy it before they could do that. And he did last Friday, and they went right after him, and they've now got him squarely where they want him. For all the naysaying gloom and doom talk about there hasn't been anyone convicted of this since the Reagan era, well, that's true, because there really hasn't been much of a threat since the Reagan era. The only question here is the Justice Department, now that the White House has removed all the protections from Donald Trump with regards to executive privilege, this is turning out to be a straight-up contempt case. And they will have to hold him in contempt after the vote is done and forward it on to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution. And then let's see what the smirky look on Steve Bannon's face looks like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and also I thought Liz Cheney went right to it. Give me 16 again. I mean, I thought she went right to it. Is not only she talked about, called out the meeting in the war room at the Willard Hotel, and Steve Bannon had knowledge of advanced planning, but then went right to this.
Mr. Bannon's and Mr. Trump's privilege arguments do, however, appear to reveal one thing. They suggest that President Trump was personally involved in the planning and execution of January 6th. And this committee will get to the bottom of that.
I asked Jill Wine-Banks yesterday, Malcolm, do we suffer in this whole era of this all being out in the open? Whereas Nixon was behind closed doors, like we didn't watch bin Laden and the 9/11 terrorists plan this in advance and have, this is the difference. This was all planned out in the open. This whole terrorist, as you know, as a terrorist expert, it was a terrorist attack. It was a terrorist attack, and it was all planned in the open. Are we sort of just getting numb because this was not surreptitious in any way?
I think the planners relied on the fact that they were doing everything out in the open to a certain extent, including meeting at the Willard Hotel. And we discussed this very early on after the insurrection, that the real act here was not just the people going in and breaking things, but whoever orchestrated the framework for the conspiracy to make sure that this happened. There was just no way that this was spontaneous. I was watching it in real time on the streams, on the video streams of the people who were the Proud Boys and everybody who were doing the fighting at the west and east entrances to the building. And it was clear everyone bought helmets, everyone bought body armor. This, had to have filtered down from somewhere. And, and considering all the incitement that was going on at the speech, Steve Bannon's commentary the day before, where he said, things were going to be happening. These were very important indicators for the investigation. The reason that we're finding this out now, and I got to tell you something, where I think we would have ignored it or where the Republicans would have downplayed it is if there was no commission. And then that's how Donald Trump does things. It lets things out into the air. It doesn't shock anyone but except the people that already knew about it. And then it just dies in the news media stream. We have an official investigation which can hold people criminally responsible now. That's what makes this different.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of in the open, I mean, Steve Bannon, what's today? Tuesday, continued to promote lies about the 2020 election, despite the fact he's in the middle of the contempt of Congress, right? He, in a significant portion of his war room, whatever the hell that thing is, he devoted the whole segment to the idea of the election being stolen. So they continue to do it. He went on to speak to guests about auditing the 2020 vote in Arizona, Utah, and Pennsylvania, praised his guests for preaching the gospel of the 3rd of November. I mean, the brazenness, right, that they've showed through this whole thing, right through the beginning with Russia, your first book, the Mueller report, just the brazenness of them colluding with Russia really in the open, or right up through this, right? He's still doing it.
I got to tell you, and that's what's so amazing about Steve Bannon, is that this guy is an old school fascist, okay? And he's proud of it. He revels in the idea that you think of him as an enabler to a guy who tried to create a school in Italy that was going to be the academy of political warfare gladiators, as he called them. And he was going to make a cadre of trans fascists throughout Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and the Americas in order to topple democratic governments. And he said it out loud. He sees himself. Let me tell you something. A lot of people say Steve Bannon is more like Goebbels, right? He's the propagandist. No, this guy's Heinrich Himmler. Yeah. He wants to be the person who executes the policy and puts the most radical ideas in Donald Trump's head. And he is talking to the people who are going to send him money for all of this. He thinks he's going to go through the courts. The courts will eliminate this. He'll become a hero, and then that money will sustain him for decades.
Yeah. They're all of them grifters. Benny Thompson yesterday, Chairman Thompson said, when you think about what we're investigating, a violent attack on the seat of our democracy, it is shocking to me. Shocking that anyone would not do anything in their power to assist our investigation. It's a shame Mr. Bannon has put us in this position, but we won't take no for an answer. Mr. Bannon will comply with our investigation, or he will face consequences. I mean, that's the thing, Malcolm. It was an attack on our democracy. I mean, how many people have made the analogy about, the Al-Qaeda tried once at the World Trade Center. That was a training exercise. Then they came back. I mean, there has got to be consequences all the way to the top for this. Every time I hear more about it, I'm like, how can we just go, oh, well, to this terrorist attack on our country?
Right. Well, the media is partially to blame for this. There have been several convictions from the insurrection, which have led to guilty pleas and years-long jail sentences, particularly the ones regarding violence and firearms. And all we hear about are the people who are getting misdemeanors. It is not and this is where Trump gets his power, right? Things that shocked and outraged us 10 years ago. Yep. One minor incident violation of the Hatch Act would have been considered, grounds for congressional investigations. Subpoenas were considered serious things. We have been so watered down through the shock doctrine of Trump and the news media learning to not give a flip that we're at a waypoint where democracy itself is literally under attack, and half the political parties in the United States don't care, and then the news media won't find anything interesting about it when it involves Donald Trump, other than the fact that, Donald Trump says something outrageous about Colin Powell, or Donald Trump, every day reiterates the big lie. Yeah. And as CNN and MSNBC are carrying the water, right, calling this out, with some of the most people who were tepid a year ago are now boiling because they see this thing happening. People like
Speaking
us,
of which, Colin Powell was one of them, sounding the alarm after January 6th.
He saw the threat to an existential threat to everything that he had ever served every minute towards.
Yeah.
And this is why we need to be re-energizing ourselves. We're 1 year out again from the potential end of American democracy.